when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters,
yes,
or, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean,
or the Pope.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah.
Guess who attacked Mel Gibson? Catholics.
The latest charge relates to a case when Benedict, in his previous incarnation as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the newspaper alleges that Vatican officials, including the future Pope, declined to discipline or defrock the priest, Father Lawrence Murphy, who was a teacher at a school for deaf children in Wisconsin for 24 years and was suspected of sexually abusing up to 200 boys. I'll leave it to you to be the judge here. I see Theodore Schubat is in the chat.
You don't see them getting outraged about how the church has become Sodom. No. Mel Gibson talking about the evils of the Catholic Church. We got to do a YouTube video. We got to expose Mel Gibson. Instead of exposing the church, let's attack Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson recently did an interview with Joe Rogan. And I have watched most of that interview. I have about 20 minutes or so left. But for the most part, I watched the interview. And it was a very good interview because Mel Gibson shed light on a lot of the darkness that's in the church. In fact, he shed light on all the darkness. Because if you look at the darkness that is in the Vatican, what do you see? Defending pedophilia.
Sure, it's gotten a bad rap. And people do feel free to beat up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Even I do when I see it's like, when it's not fair, or when I think it's off.
Right.
Like, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean.
Or the Pope.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah. It's not great.
I thought he was like the more progressive Pope.
Oh, he's very progressive, yes.
But he's covering up for stuff as well. Well, they all are. I mean, it's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history.
It's a very small country. It's a country.
Yeah, it's a country inside of a small city.
Yeah.
Because Rome's not the biggest city.
No.
And then it's got a country inside the city.
Yeah.
With walls around it.
Sure.
And you can't extradite people.
Yeah. Pretty weird.
How convenient.
Yeah. Even Ratzinger, he didn't drive from the Vatican to the other place. He flew.
Ooh.
And it was only a little while, because who knows why. I don't know.
Well, he was wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had done, one of the things that he had done was he had moved a priest that had molested 100 kids, and he moved him to some new place where he molested deaf kids.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's the dirtiest, most evil practice that the Catholic Church has been accused of.
I think so, and many institutions as well. Yeah. But that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in.
Defending priests who have preyed on children and young men. That's what you see. And it's pure hell. There's nothing darker than this. It's pure abysmal hell. It's sinister. It's utterly sinister, antichrist, satanic. It's diabolical. It's demonic. And Mel Gibson spoke about how the Vatican has covered up for pedophile priests. And Joe Rogan specifically mentioned a case. He mentioned the case of Father Lawrence C. Murphy. And yes, I had to read that because I don't want to remember this guy's name. I don't even want to call him a guy. He's a demon in the flesh. And Mel Gibson talked about Father Murphy, who was in the diocese of Milwaukee, and he was in the state of Wisconsin, but he was in the diocese of Milwaukee, and he was in charge of a school for deaf kids who can't hear, the deaf, and they have to use sign language. The deaf kids, vulnerable children, disabled kids. And it was like putting a fox in a hen house. It was like putting a wolf in a hen house. And he was molesting these kids. And he may have molested literally hundreds of children, disabled children. And guess who attacked Mel Gibson? Guess who attacked him? Catholics. And Catholics attacked him. Instead of them coming out and saying, thank you, Mel Gibson, who is also a Catholic. Thank you, Mel Gibson, as a fellow Catholic, for shedding light on the darkness that has possessed the Vatican, that is still possessing the Vatican. But no, they didn't do that. They attacked Mel Gibson. Just like people attacked Mel Gibson for making the film The Passion of the Christ. And who attacked Mel Gibson for making The Passion of the Christ? It was Jewish people who hate Jesus Christ, and they were mad that a guy made an accurate depiction, made a film that shows an accurate depiction of what happened in the trial and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and they were upset by this, just like Turkish people get upset when people bring up the Armenian genocide. And now you see Catholics acting like the people who got mad at Mel Gibson for making the film The Passion of the Christ, because he was accurately describing the evils of the Vatican. And so I was watching this Catholic podcaster. His name is something Lofton. And he has a podcast, I think it's called Reason and Theology, something like that. And he was live streaming. And I noticed he was live streaming. I was on my computer and I said, "Oh, he's talking about Mel Gibson. What's this guy going to say? Is he going to bash Mel Gibson for what? Exposing the pedophile scandal and all that stuff?" So I'm listening to this guy, and he's talking about some of the things that Mel Gibson brought up. And I just put one line. Of course, he's criticizing Mel Gibson. Okay. I put one line on the chat, because there's a chat for the live stream. I put one line for the chat, and I said, Pope Francis supports same-sex civil unions.
I see Theodore Schubat is in the chat. He says Pope Francis supported same-sex civil unions. I have a lot of videos on that, criticizing it, his position on it. But you need to make sure to do so from an informed and accurate perspective. That's all I ask. A lot of people aren't informed.
Las personas homosexuales tienen derecho a estar en la familia. Son hijos de Dios, tienen derecho a una familia. No se puede echar de la familia a nadie, ni hacer la vida imposible por ese ejemplo. Lo que tenemos que hacer es una ley de convivencia civil. Tienen derecho a estar cubiertos legalmente.
And this Catholic guy, he says, oh, Theodore Schubat is here. So he knew who I was. He knew how to pronounce my name. And he said, yeah, Francis did say that, but, you have to understand the context and the background and blah, blah, blah. Just weaselly stuff. Really just, instead of saying, yeah, you're right, Theodore, he said that, it's an abomination. Instead of just saying that, right, just pointing out the obvious. What does this guy do? You have to understand the context and the background. And what do I need to understand to identify something that is so clearly wicked and evil? If the Pope comes out and says that he supports rape, I don't give a shit about the context, because there is no context in which that is righteous. There is no context in which saying something like that is acceptable. So I don't really give a damn about the background or the context or the information and the details. He said we should have same-sex civil unions. That's it. The Vatican supports same-sex civil unions, which is just secular gay marriage. It's Sodom. Once you embrace Sodom in any way, in any degree, it's evil. It's an abomination. It's like what Jesus said. Let your yeses be yeses and let your noes be noes. Anything else is of evil. If you see explicit evil being preached, it don't matter what type of lukewarm argumentation you want to bring about. Doesn't matter how much equivocation you want to bring about. It's evil. And this way of arguing, this way of argumentation, well, you got to understand this and understand that. No, I see clear evil and that's it. If I see a genocide being done, I say that's mass murder. Well, you need to understand the people who are doing the genocide, they're in the middle of a war, and so things happen to war. No. Murder is murder, and that's that. Evil is evil. And the denial of obvious evil is also evil. So I wrote a line back to this guy, and I said, but he did say it, right? He did say it. And this guy, this Catholic guy, he writes a response to me, and he says, I don't want to have this debate because it's off topic. How is this off topic? We're talking about the evils of the Vatican, are we not? It's not off topic. It's not like I'm coming in and asking you about American foreign policy. I'm asking you about the Vatican's policy. It's very, very clear. It's quite obvious. It's quite conspicuous. It's quite whatever word you want to take from the thesaurus. That means it's right in front of your face. So I continue to listen to this stream because I want to see what circus I'm dealing with. What song and dance am I dealing with here? And this guy, he plays Mel Gibson talking about this cover-up in which there was a priest who was molesting deaf kids at a school for deaf children in Wisconsin. Cardinal Ratzinger, before he became Pope Benedict XVI, he was told about this priest and didn't do a damn thing about it. So what does this Catholic apologist do? He brings up an article that's published by some mainstream media outlet. And he reads the whole article. And the article is talking about what this priest did, Father Murphy, and how Father Murphy was a predator. And it gives you all the sick details.
The latest charge relates to a case when Benedict, in his previous incarnation as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, was in charge of the church's Doctrinal Enforcement Institute. The New York Times obtained papers relating to the case, in which it says church officials had tried to keep private. The newspaper alleges that Vatican officials, including the future pope, declined to discipline or defrock the priest, Father Lawrence Murphy, who was a teacher at a school for deaf children in Wisconsin for 24 years and was suspected of sexually abusing up to 200 boys.
And what does this Catholic guy say after he reads the whole article? He doesn't say, wow, this is terrible. Oh my God, this is evil. He says, I'll let you guys make your own conclusion about what I just read.
I'll leave it to you to be the judge here on whether the accusations that are being made are accurate.
Huh? What the hell is the purpose of listening to you if you're not going to give your opinion? And I asked him in the chat, I said, what's your opinion on the article? I didn't hear a response. If he did, then I was gone by that point. I'll let you make up your own damn mind about something that's just so clearly sinister. Sexually molesting deaf kids. And so I looked into this. And I found an article published by the New York Times about Father Murphy. And I'll read to you guys some excerpts from this article. It says, they were deaf, but they were not silent. For decades, a group of men who were sexually abused as children by the Reverend Lawrence C. Murphy at a school for the deaf in Wisconsin reported to every type of official they could think of. So these victims of this guy, they were going to various officials of the diocese, and no one gave a damn. Nobody cared. Nobody gave a damn. They told other priests. They told 3 archbishops of Milwaukee. And isn't that what they tell us to do? When we see these types of problems, they say, go to the bishop, go to the shepherd. But if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, which is to defend the defenseless, which is to defend the sheep from the wolves, then they're not shepherds. They're hirelings. They're hirelings. Jesus said that the shepherd fights for the flock to defend the flock from the wolves, but the hireling runs away. But let me correct myself. These people, these shepherds are not running away, are they? They're allowing the wolves to devour the innocent. Perhaps they're not really hirelings. Perhaps they're wolves themselves. Perhaps they are also wolves, agents, acolytes of Sodom and the Antichrist. They use sign language, written affidavits, and graphic gestures to show what exactly Father Murphy had done to them, but their reports fell on the deaf ears of hearing people. This week, they learned that Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, This is before he became Pope Benedict, supposed based pope. They learned that Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, now Pope Benedict XVI, received letters about Father Murphy in 1996 from Archbishop Rambert G. Weakland of Milwaukee, who said that the deaf community needed, quote, a healing response from the church. The Vatican sat on the case, meaning they didn't do a damn thing, then equivocated, which is what they do best. They use these Talmudic arguments and equivocation and sophistry and gaslighting, and you name any form of manipulation you can think of, these bastards do it. And then Father Murphy died in 1998. He died as a priest, which means Mr. Ratzinger didn't give a damn. Looks like Mr. Ratzinger's name really fits him. He's just a rat at the end of the day, now is he? Look what it says here. Father Murphy may have molested as many as 200 boys while he worked at the school from 1950 to 1974. Hundreds of disabled kids, boys, molested, sexually tortured by this evil priest of Satan. And Mel Gibson was bringing this story up, and Catholics have an issue. And this Catholic podcaster, he was reading the article about Father Murphy, and I looked at the comments in the chat from the Catholics, and I saw this one Catholic guy write something like, I don't believe the legacy media. I don't believe it. Oh, you believe and you refuse to believe whenever it's to your advantage, right? Whichever option is to your advantage, whichever is advantageous to you. If it's to your advantage to believe the legacy media, you'll believe the legacy media. But if it's to your advantage to say, I don't believe in the legacy media, then you will express such dismissiveness. You see? This is why I say, and I will always say this until I die, evil, all evil without any exceptions, is the denial of the obvious. We all know that pedophilia is evil. It's obvious. I don't have to give you the argument as to why it's evil. You know it's evil. It's obviously evil. But to deny the gravity of that evil is evil. And the one who does this crime, the predator, he knows what he's doing is evil. He doesn't give a damn, so he denies the obvious. All evil, no matter how you look at it, all evil is the denial of the obvious. The one who murders knows he's doing wrong. The one who rapes knows he's doing wrong. The one who steals knows he's doing wrong, but he doesn't give a damn because he wants to do the evil, so he denies the obvious. All evil is the denial of the obvious, and the Vatican is, well, if there was a trial for the Vatican, they'd be found guilty of denying the obvious in the first degree. Internal church correspondence unearthed in a lawsuit against the Archdiocese of Milwaukee and given to the New York Times, which made it public this week, included a letter from the Reverend David Walsh, who served as a chaplain for the deaf in Chicago, saying that teenage students at St. John's had told him in the late 1950s about Father Murphy's abuse. Father Walsh said he told Archbishop Albert Gregory Mayer of Milwaukee, who sent Father Murphy on a retreat. How do you deal with a sexual predator who's preying on disabled kids? You send him to a retreat. Why? So he can just relax? On a retreat, and then put him back in the school to undo the harm he had done. And you know, I've heard of this evil coming out of the Vatican before. There was a priest who was a convicted pedophile, and his name was Father Robert Hirdlicka. And he was found guilty. He was sentenced to prison. And before he was put behind bars, there was a priest by the name of Robert L. Kinsel. And Robert L. Kinsel, he contacted the authorities and he said, please don't put Father Robert Hirdlicka behind bars. He's a good man. He just needs to be put into a Catholic rehab center. And he needs to connect with God. this is what they do. They know what they're doing. When they do this sort of stuff, when they do this sort of shit, this evil shit, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know that they're trying to cover up for a criminal, the worst kind of criminal, someone who preys on children. And when Father Robert Hrdlicka was released from prison, after he served his term, do you know what Father Robert Hrdlicka did? Did he go and confess the evils that he did? Did he say, I am so sorry, I repent? And did he do any of that? Did he seek forgiveness? No. Do you know what Robert Hrdlicka did after he got out of prison? He drove all the way to Canada. He traveled to Canada, and he registered a charity for children. Yeah. He said, I want to start a charity for children. And the Canadians looked at his background, and they said, And they deported him back to America. Now, that's the type of deportation story that I want to hear. I remember when Trump was president the first time, I heard all sorts of stories about people being arrested. Like, I heard a story about some Polish guy who was a doctor in the U.S. for like 40 years, and immigration arrested him. I'm like, well, what? But that's the kind of deportation story I like to hear. They deported him back to America. Maybe the Canadians need to build a big-ass wall. This guy didn't give a damn. This is the type of evil that I've seen in the Vatican, in the Catholic world. And I remember when I confronted a predator priest by the name of Michael Yarbrough. I confronted this guy in his church. I went to his church. Well, in fact, I confronted him in a cafe because he invited me to talk about religious stuff. And I looked him up and I found out, actually, he tried to play this trick before. He invited a young man over to his office, and then he sexually assaulted the young man. And so I knew he was trying to do the same thing to me, especially after I called him and said, hey, let's meet. And he told me I prefer that we meet in my office because that's where he sexually assaulted a young man, in his office. So I knew at that point what his intentions were. And I said, no, I prefer to meet in a public place. We went to a cafe. I confronted him in the cafe. To make a long story short,
Monsignor Michael Yarbrough, pastor at St. Matthew's Parish where you worked at, admitted to kissing an emotionally unstable teenager in the lips. You say devils don't exist? I'm looking at one.
And then I wasn't done with them. And then I went to his church about a week or so later, and his ushers told me to leave, and they knew why I was there. I mean, it's quite obvious that they knew because I was simply filming Father Michael Yarbrough giving mass, and people film masses all the time. So how the hell would they have known why I was there? And so obviously, the priest told them, and so they told me to leave. And I remember all these Catholic laity, they saw me in the church, and they started giving me all these nasty looks. Why were they giving me such nasty looks? Why were the ushers telling me to leave in such a nasty manner? Why was it that when I told the usher about or really about why Yarbrough was a sexual predator, he said, I don't believe you. And I said, well, the San Antonio Express reported on Yarbrough's evil wrongdoing. And he said, I don't really care. I don't believe you. Why was that? Why would a layperson tell me that? Oh, because the laity are the biggest enablers of this evil, and they are the ones truly who spawn this evil. And frankly, I find it absolutely and utterly sinister and disgusting how the Catholic laity, Catholic podcasters will sit there and will attack people for exposing the evils of the Vatican. They are the biggest enablers ever. And you don't see them getting outraged about how the church has become Sodom. No. The church becoming Sodom, no outrage, nothing. Mel Gibson talking about the evils of the Catholic Church, we got to do a YouTube video. We got to expose Mel Gibson. Instead of exposing the church, let's attack Mel Gibson. They get outraged about Mel Gibson, but not about Sodom being in the church. It's just, it's disgusting. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.